everybody, and welcome back to One Nerd to Rule Them All. And in today's video, we unpack the history of yet another dwarvish kingdom, known to be the grandest of them all. Today we are talking about Moria, also known as Khazad-dûm. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. Khazad-dûm, also known as Dwarves, the Mines of Moria or simply Moria, was the underground kingdom beneath the Misty Mountains. It was known for being the ancient realm of the Dwarves of Durin's folk, and the most famed of all the Dwarven realms. The Dwarves was found by Durin the Deathless in the far distant past, long before the creation of the sun and moon in the years of the trees of the First Age. Durin had awakened at Mount Gundabad not long after the elves first awoke, and as the eldest amongst the seven fathers of the Dwarves, he was acknowledged as the greatest amongst them, a status that was subsequently inherited by his descendants, the kings of the Longbeards, also known as the Line of Durin. As legend goes, Durin made his way south from Mount Gundabad until Durin ultimately found a glen of shadows between two great arms of the mountain, above which three white peaks were shining. Within this heavily wooded valley, a long series of short waterfalls led down to a long oval lake, which appeared to have a magical quality. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. Receiving these stars as a crown glittering above his head, Durin took this as an auspicious sign, and named the lake Khazad-dûm, or the Mirror. The three peaks overshadowing the lake were named the Red Horn, the Silver Tine, and the Cloudy Head. The icy cold springs below the lake had called Kibble Nala, and were the source of the Silverlod. And to the valley itself he gave the name as a Nor-Bizarre, the Dimrill Dale. Durin chose the eastward-facing caves from Khazad-dûm as the earliest beginnings of his new stronghold. All of these places became revered among Durin's people in later days. His descendants would go on to erect a rune-carved stone monolith, known as Durin Stone, on the site where he had first looked into the Mirror. And although it had become unreadable, weather-worn by the end of the Third Age, broken, cracked and faded, the influence of Durin I and the founding king of Khazad-dûm was never forgotten. The long reign of Khazad-dûm's first king was a golden age, remembered as Durin's Day. This name would later go on to be applied to the Dwarvish New Year. During that period, Khazad-dûm grew continuously both in size and population, until it became the greatest of all the mansions of the Dwarves. During the reign of Durin the Deathless, some of the wonders of dwarvish architecture were built into Khazad-dûm, such as Durin's Bridge, the Second Hall, the Endless Stairs and Durin's Tower. After his death, the reputation of Durin's realm continued to grow, not merely due to his spiritual ascendancy over the other fathers of the Dwarves as their eldest, or to the Dwarves' growing size, but to its greatest wealth found upon its uniquely precious metal mithril, which was universally prized yet found nowhere else in Middle-earth. Khazad-dûm played no part in the wars of Beleriand. It in fact stood as a respite from orc attacks throughout the First Age, when Morgoth needed all of his strength elsewhere. The eventual death of Durin the Deathless occurred before the end of the First Age. He was then buried in the tomb of Khazad-dûm. Early in the Second Age, Khazad-dûm's realm of Longbeards was enriched in culture, as well as skills and in population, by large numbers of refugees from Belgost and Nogrod, cities ruined at the end of the First Age, along with most of Beleriand. This was due to the cataclysmic final battle against Morgoth. The dwarves of Belgost and Nogrod were not Longbeards, but Broadbeams and Firebeards. Whether they remained separate clans of groups within their new home, or became merged within the Longbeards, is unknown. With the foundation of the Noldorian realm of Eregion to the west, and Khazad-dûm around 700 of the Second Age, friendly relations between the Longbeards and the elves were firmly established. This friendship also resulted in a massive westward extension of the subterranean realm of Khazad-dûm. Its habitable parts remained in the eastward side, but passages were delved through miles of rock that terminated at a gigantic stone portal, known as the West Gate. This stood on the borders of Eregion. The West Gate allowed the elf lady Galadriel and her followers to pass eastwards through Khazad-dûm and settle in Lothlorien, downstream of Azanul-Bizarre. All of the Dwarrowdelf was originally illuminated by many shining lamps of crystal, although the halls of the highest levels were also lit with windows and shafts carved into the mountain side. These levels lay between flights of 50 or more stone steps, with 7 hollowed out in the mountain above the ground level, and many more subterranean levels or deeps beneath the great gates at the head of Dimril Dale. Every level comprised of a multitude of arched passages, as well as chambers and many pillared halls, often with black walls polished and smooth as glass. Below the level of the gates lay mines, treasures, and even dungeons, although far below the lowest deep of Khazad-dûm lay primordial tunnels in perpetual darkness, gnawing by nameless things that had lived there since the earliest beginnings of Arda. Few, if any, actually ever caught glimpses of these creatures, and no descriptions of them is exact, with the exemption of possibly the Watcher in the Water, which Gandalf suggested may have come from these regions. One important feature of the Dwarrowdelf was the defensive structure known as Durin's Bridge, a slender bridge of stone without curb or rail. It spanned a 50-foot wide chasm of indeterminate depth, allowing enemy soldiers to cross in only a single file, one after the other, not side by side. Another steeped in legend was the Endless Stair, which ascended from the lowest dungeon to the highest peak, where it terminated within Durin's tower, carved into the solid rock of the tip of Zicard Zigil. In the War of the Elves and Sauron, Eregion was destroyed, and the survivors, along with a relief army led by Elrond, were in danger of being overtaken and destroyed. But Durin II sent an army of dwarves which attacked the Morgul host in the rear, allowing the elves to escape. Following the battle, the dwarves retreated into their city and closed the gates. In the reign of Durin IV, the dwarves joined the last alliance of elves and men, fighting against Sauron in the Battle of Dagorlad and the Siege of Barad-dûr. Throughout the early Third Age, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm expanded their treasure, but their numbers continued to dwindle. The majority of their wealth was based on their hoards of mithril, which they mined in their deepest tunnels, and as the centuries went by, the dwarves delved deeper into their precious metal. In 1980 of the Third Age, they dug too deeply and greedily for mithril, and to their loss they unearthed a nameless terror in the depths beneath the city. This dreadful creature wrought destruction throughout the city, wiping out most of the dwarves and slaying King Durin IV. Thereafter, the creature was named Durin's Bain. The dwarves tried to fight, but the following year, Durin's son, Nain I, was also slain, forcing the dwarves to abandon their home for good. After the dwarves had left, Khazad-dûm gathered dust and stood dark and empty, but for the sinister creature that lurked in the depths. This was when it was named Moria, the Black Pit. The monster, later revealed to be a Balrog of Morgoth, dwelt alone in Moria for nearly 5 centuries, until it was populated once again, but not by dwarves. The goblins, fleeing from the north, began to raid the abandoned city of its treasures and occupied it. They came upon the Balrog but established a short and uneasy coexistence within it. Sauron started to send out troops of orcs and cave trolls to populate Moria, making the abandoned city a stronghold for them to multiply. During the Battle of Azanul-Bizarre, many of these orcs were felled in the valley beneath the eastern gate of Moria in 2799 of the Third Age, and the numbers were reduced dramatically. But the Balrog still remained, along with many orcs and trolls with him, and so Khazad-dûm remained a stronghold of evil. The wizard Gandalf entered the city for the first time between 2845 and 2850 of the Third Age, searching for King Thrain II, who had recently disappeared on a journey to the Lonely Mountain. In 2989 of the Third Age, the dwarves of the Lonely Mountain, descendants of the ancient Durin's folk, attempted to reclaim and recolonize Khazad-dûm. The expedition was led by Balin, son of Fundin, one of Thorin Oakenshield's company of dwarves, who accompanied Bilbo Baggins on the quest of Erebor. He led a group of dwarves from Erebor to Moria, and successfully drove back the orcs, taking many of the eastern halls and recovering priceless ancestral treasures, such as Durin's axe. However, the Balrog remained active, and the numbers of orcs were too great compared to their small company, and all, including Balin, were slain in 2994 of the Third Age. When the Fellowship of the Ring set out for Rivendell on the quest of the Ring, they were forced to make their way through Moria after the failed attempt to climb Redhorn, where they were pursued by wargs. They entered through the West Gate near a lake of dark water, from which the Watcher emerged and attempted to kill Frodo Baggins. When inside, after escaping the Watcher, the Fellowship passed through many tunnels and great halls, until finally reaching the Chamber of Mazabul, where they found a book recounting the last accounts of Balin's expedition. It was here that they were taken by surprise, as orcs and cave trolls pursued them through Moria to the bridge of Khazad-dûm. It was here that the Balrog had risen from the depths and stood before them. Gandalf bravely confronted the creature, and the two briefly duelled on the bridge before falling together into the abyss below. The rest of the Fellowship safely fled Moria into the Dimril Dale. Gandalf and the Balrog both survived their fall, landing in a swamp, before the wizard then pursued the monster up to the Endless Stair, the high peak of Celebdil, where a final battle took place. Gandalf slew the Balrog, before succumbing to his wounds from the fight. Following the exile from Khazad-dûm, the Longbeard dwarves always yearned for their homeland, even after more than 1,000 years had passed, as Anul Bazaar became the deep shadowing valley which they cannot forget, just as they felt compelled to continue incorporating the image of these mountains into many works of metal and stone, and into many songs and tales. With the destruction of the Balrog, the way was at last clear for the Longbeards to reclaim Khazad-dûm. And a few centuries into the Fourth Age, during the Seventh, a descendant of Thorin III Stonehelm led his people back into their ancient homeland, retrieving what they could from Khazad-dûm's once mighty riches and restoring the realm. This brings us to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this content, then please feel free to leave a comment down below on any videos you would like to see in the future. Anyway, that'll be it from me. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Bye for now.